CATS was... It wasn't really an impossible idea, you know. It was just that it was just a whole selection of wonderful verse that I decided I'd like to try and see if I could set to music, because I never really worked that way round before. When I had written Superstar and Evita and Josie with the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat with Tim Rice, he tended to put the words to the music afterwards. And so I just, for my own interest, I thought, I'll try and set these poems. Maybe we'll have a kind of concert piece or something. I knew them from when I was a kid. My mother used to read them to me, and then I used to love them anyway. I often used to just read them in bed and think, you know, that these are so very, very brilliant pieces of verse. Of course, I mean, he wrote them for children, but he really wrote them for adults too, because they were the children of all his friends and his, you know, crowd in London at the time, and they were pretty intelligent children, I would imagine. It's really very interesting also because when I was writing them, I kind of got the feeling that he had had some kind of music in mind. And when I finally met his widow, Valerie, and she gave us permission to set the poems and indeed to take it forward to the musical in the form that it did, she told me that he, in fact, wrote an awful lot of them to melodies that were hits of the day. Quite interesting. I think in one case, I think I know what one of them must have been. But just because the meter follows almost exactly something, I think I know. But she certainly said that that's what he did. And in fact, what happened was that Valerie Elliott gave us the story of Grisabella, the glamour cat, which was a poem that was not published in the original book. And several other poems, and bits and pieces and fragments that he had written. So, funnily enough, what we did was very much based on some fragments and this hint he gave us about what could be perhaps a stage event. He thought that Grisabella... I mean, in fact, it's quite interesting. There was an interview he gave, which I happened to see on television only about 2 years ago, and he was talking about the bit of Rhapsody on a Windy Night that we used as the basis for Memory. And it was interesting, the lines that he quoted were almost exactly the same as the ones that we picked when we used as the basis for the song. And he obviously had a kind of fascination with, I think when he was in Paris, he had a kind of fascination with fallen women, and that's Grisabella, of course. We were given permission by Valerie Elliott, which was wonderful, to be able to dip into the main body of his work. And it's from Rhapsody on a Windy Night that Memory comes. There was a poem at the beginning which was about dogs and cats, which in fact we adapted for the... I mean, we had Richard Stilgo adapted that poem so that it was only about cats for the beginning of Us. But the opening, beginning, that is all, or that's not in the original book. It is absolutely based on something he wrote.
Are you blind when you're born?
Can you see in the dark?
Can you look at a king? Would you sit on his throne? Can you say of your bite that it's worse than your bark? Are you cock of the walk?
When you're walking alone.
Because jellicles are, and jellicles do. Jellicles do, and jellicles would. Jellicles would, and jellicles can. Jellicles can, and jellicles do.
Actually, I mean, the show, in a sense, I think does reflect some of the spirit of Elliott's writings in his more serious work. And that, I think we really tried to stick to that pretty much. I mean, I was very, very pleased that the performance that was given for like when we became the longest running musical on Broadway, I mean, I was very, very pleased that the characterization of the show still seemed to be very, very much there.
There's a man over there with a look of surprise, as much as to say, well now, how about that? Do I actually see with my own very eyes a man who's not heard of a jellicle cat?
What you can't do, people think, well, this is a whole collection of cat poems, and I mean, it's not an arbitrary order or anything. It's actually through composed really pretty much. I mean, the first act, for example, is actually quite tightly composed from end to end. And apart from the growl tiger sequence, which is just meant to be kind of pantomime and fun, so is the second act. So it's the beginning of it is the end of the show, and it all knits together in a way. The music had to kind of do that because with a whole load of different constituents and ingredients, the music has to be the thing that is the knitting force, really.
Then the pugs in the palms are no longer aloof, but some from the balconies, some from the roof, joined into the din with a until you could hear them all over the park. Until you could hear them all over the park.
We went to Gillian first because we knew there would have to be quite a considerable dance ingredient. But after we had done the performance which we did at my little arts festival I do every year, when we realised we got something really bigger than we thought we had, then we went to Trevor Nunn, who had actually done a couple of musical type things before, admittedly at the Royal Shakespeare Company, you know, only, but not commercially. But he had done a kind of musical of The Comedy of Errors, and Once in a Lifetime he had directed, and they showed that he had a great command of music. So I felt, and Cameron Mackintosh felt, when we sort of thought we might try and do this together, we felt that it was the right choice. Musicals are a very collaborative form. I mean, they be this or Phantom of the Opera or even Evita or whatever. You know, they were all pieces where if any one of the ingredients had not been right, we probably wouldn't be here today. They are hugely collaborative, and I think it makes. And also, I mean, there are different directors are right for different things. You know, I mean, I think Trevor Nunn probably wouldn't have done what Hal Prince did for the Phantom of the Opera, but then Hal Prince would never have got Cats together.
Jellicle cats develop slowly.
Jellicle cats are not too big.
Jellicle cats are roly-poling.
We know how to dance a gavotte and a jig.
In its own way and in its own terms, it is a very, very good musical. And it's very entertaining. And all of the ingredients in it are really pretty strong, I think. I think one of the things that I think comes over now, today, when one looks at it, is just how ahead of its time and underestimated the choreography is. I think what Gillian Lynn did with it is really extraordinary, and suddenly one begins to realise now, after all these years and all the other musicals that have been on since, you know, just how revolutionary in a way what she was doing was, and yet people didn't really see it at the time, I don't think.
In the afternoon,
Reserving our terpsichorean powers.
dance by the light of the Jellicle moon.
I have to say, I mean, John Napier, I mean, was really the architect of all of this, and I mean, it's a very brilliant vision that he's come up with. I mean, it's a fairly staggering piece of work. We've got a couple of cats, yes, in various places and houses around the place.